What is going on, dads? Welcome to the Dad Life Podcast. I'm Isaac, your host. We are just a group of dads seeking wisdom together from dads around the world. And so I've really enjoyed bringing you these conversations. And if you have enjoyed them, also leave a comment or a like or a rating on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. That would help me out a bunch. And I want to let you know about the upcoming Fatherhood Primer course. It's a 4-week course. The next cohort is starting in October, on October 1st. So if you want to jump into that, it is a 4-week course. Every week covers a different topic of fatherhood, manhood, marriage, parenting, discipline, all sorts of different things. And there is a weekly live Q&A with me, a group connection aspect to it, so you can connect with other dads, homework, outside resources to help you take your fatherhood to the next level. So if you're interested in that, you can click one of the links below to learn more about that. But without further ado, let's hop into this conversation with Nate. Nate is a father of 6. He's got one off in college. He's got one that he's just bringing into the world now. He has a wide range of wisdom for us to learn from. It talks about disciplining children, different mindsets that fathers can have so that we can stay cool in our connection with our children. So let's hop into the conversation. All right, I'm here with Nate from Dads Don't Babysit. I love that name. Can you give us just a background of who you are and what you do and where you are in the world?
Yeah. So I am father of 5 with one on the way. So we're going to go for a half a dozen.
Nice work.
It's funny because it does actually feel like being pregnant now. We're like, yeah, this feels like the last one. This feels like a good time. Like a nice bow ties it right up. Feels good. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good even number.
yeah, right. It's funny because my wife does not like even numbers. So I thought, we'd be good if we could do maybe twins. That'd be great. Let's just do twins.
Yeah,
and
get a
just do
7.
7 and it'd be fine. But seriously, the step from one baby to twins would mean new car. Within the next couple of years, we'd have to move because we wouldn't have space. So when we heard the ultrasound this couple weeks ago, and there's one heartbeat, it was like, okay,
There you go.
we're good.
We can handle
Yeah,
this.
that's right. Like my older two, my oldest is in college, and then my second oldest is old enough to drive. So it's one of those things where we can fit everybody, or we can drive some separate cars. And if we do something big, like go to Florida to visit family, we can rent a van.
Yeah, there you go. Did you always plan on having a big family, or did that just happen?
It's kind of funny. I actually used to say I wanted 12. I had no idea
Really?
the insanity of that, and that still sounds crazy to me, but I used to say I wanted 12.
Really? Did you grow up in a big family?
I didn't actually. It was just me and my brother growing up.
Okay.
And but my dad was from 7, and so when we would go to like Christmas or whatever to go visit family, it was a lot of times it was everybody, and so the pandemonium that would ensue when you get there, I loved that, man. I totally loved it. And it's funny now because I used to like love the crowds and want to be close to the city and all of that stuff. And now like give me 100 acres away from everyone and I'll be happy, right? And so I feel like now it's really, I've just brought it all the way down to, I like being around my family. And
Yeah. I like the people that I create.
yeah, right.
Those ones are great. That's
How many do you have?
We just had our 4th, so what was it? August 19th. So he's
Awesome.
like 3 weeks old almost.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, that's my number 3 was born on August 19th. So,
Really?
yeah, he turned 8.
Nice. Yeah, how old are all your kids?
So 19, she'll be 17. She's already like saying she's 17, but she'll be 17 in October.
Slow down.
Yeah, right. I'm like, pump the brakes there, hardcore. Well, she'll do that, and then I go, yeah, in one more year you graduate and you're out of the house. And she'll be like, Dad.
Don't say that kind of stuff.
Right? So
That's
19, almost 17, and then 8, 7, and 3.
Cool.
And then number 6 will be here in like February, March-ish.
Yeah. How's the transition from like 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6? Like when does it start to just get easier as you add to the gang?
Everybody says it does. Like once you start playing zone defense, it's
Yeah.
just zone defense, right?
You're already overwhelmed. It doesn't matter
Exactly.
how many.
Yeah. So like you hit 3 and you're like, let's do another one. What's the matter?
Yeah.
But because we had the 2 olders, we kind of get a little bit of help from them here and there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's just life, right? So you just do it.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's what happens. It just, yeah. Yeah.
You rise to the occasion.
Yeah, exactly. And the truth is, like, I mean, they're all so different that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's pandemonium all the time. Seriously.
Yeah.
I'll people come in and I'll be like, welcome to the circus. And I've got my youngest doesn't wear clothes. I mean, no joke. Yesterday,
Yeah.
She's like, Dad, I want to go outside. And I'm like, you have no clothes on.
Go.
Like, you can't go out front. She said, well, come with me. Literally talks me into coming outside and sitting on the front porch for a few minutes. She's totally naked, waving to her neighbors. I'm like, oh man, whatever. It's totally fine.
Yeah, we gave up with shoes a while ago.
Yeah.
Like we're all just leaving the house. No one had shoes. We're like, this is just what we're doing now. To go find the shoes and make everyone wear them, it's just not worth it.
It's totally true. It's totally true.
And it turns out it's good to be barefoot.
Yeah.
I like,
yeah, no doubt.
All these Instagram things are like, don't wear shoes. I'm like, all right, good. We're already doing it.
That's right. There's grounding when you're outside.
Yeah. We're just getting grounded. Yeah. We're ahead of yeah. That's awesome. How did you get started with Dads Don't Babysit?
Yeah. So that idea actually came from a guy who he had his firstborn. I think he's on baby 3 now.
Okay.
I think they just had their 3rd little one. But when he had his first, we were on a conversation and there was like a conference call that we were going to have. And he said, hey man, I'm on the like walking treadmill with I'm babysitting the newbie.
Yeah.
And he's like, so if you hear a little one, and for me, I'm like, hey, I'm a dad. I don't care. Like I used to really, when I was like a real traditional parent, I used to hate being interrupted by the kiddos. And now I'm kind of like, you're going to see a kid like pop into a screen here or there, like, and I don't even care. I did some stuff with my job holding a sleeping child the other day. And they're like, oh, what's going on? And I'm like, she fell asleep. I pulled her out of the car and we had this meeting. So here I am.
That's what it's going
to be. But anyway, so he said, hey man, I just want to let you know, if you hear a baby, I'm babysitting. And I was like, all right, hold up right there. You're a dad. So dads don't babysit. You're being a dad. That's exactly what you should be doing. And it just kind of was one of those things where when I started my Instagram, it was either my kids cuss because I do or dads don't babysit. And my kids cuss because I do was just way too long. And so, but I really wanted to push that vibe of, hey, we're dads. Like so much, there's so much stuff about men being second class parents. And from my research, there's so much that goes wrong when dad's not in the house. You know what I mean? Like just percentages of people in jail and suicide rate, all that stuff comes from dads not being around. And so for me, when guys say that, they're discounting, I don't want to say who they are, but they're discounting such a huge portion of their life because it's so much more than just babysitting. You're a dad and that's huge.
You're fathering.
You're fathering children. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're being paid to watch someone else's kids, then you can babysit.
Yeah, then I'm babysitting. But that's somebody else's. And like I said earlier, like 100 acres all alone with mine, that's cool. Anybody else's, I'm kind of like,
I don't want to watch other people's kids. Yeah. When I was before I had kids, I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to I don't want to hold babies. I wasn't into hanging out with other people's kids.
Yeah.
And then once I had my own, I was like, oh, actually, this is way better.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, my first diaper change ever was my oldest's first diaper change. And so it was one of those things where I was like, what is this? Because it's not normal poo the first time, right? It's
black. Yeah.
I'm like, what is with the tar in here? I don't understand. It's what's going on. It was insane.
Yeah. And you can just well, how long ago was that? It was 18 years ago.
19.
Was that before you could just Google things? I guess.
You could. It's so funny because I look back on that and I'm like, oh yeah, I was literally 2 years into having a cell phone.
Yeah.
The first cell phone I ever had, like the first cell phone ever kind of thing. Not even a flip phone. It was one that, you still did T9. You didn't even do T9 where you had to type out all the text. Yeah.
ABC.
Yeah. Right. It was rough living then.
That's awesome.
But
when did you have your first kid? How old were you?
So I was 23. And so I was married previously. And that's where my two older kids are from that marriage. But I got married at 20. And then we moved out of the country and lived in Costa Rica, and he was born there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
what were you doing in Costa Rica?
Just like, I say missions work. I was learning Spanish, and I translated a lot. So for different teams that come down, I translated for construction teams and like pastors when they would speak, I could translate then. I helped out with like youth groups, and I mean, I was practically a teenager at that point, so it just threw me in with a bunch of kids.
That's how they do it. Like, you're 20, so you're the youth pastor now. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so sad. I feel bad. But, what's funny is that, like, I have friends that I graduated with. I studied ministry in college, and they went into youth ministry, and some of them just came out of youth ministry at the end of their 30s. And I'm sitting there going, how in the world how did you stay in youth ministry that long? I'd have gone crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a youth pastor for a while.
Oh, were you?
At my dad's church. Yeah.
Yeah.
I quit like 5 years ago. So once I had my own kids, I was like, I can't be running this.
Right? Like all-nighters and stuff.
Yeah.
I need like a week to recover if I stay up past 2:00, 2 in the morning. And they want to stay up all night long. Like my oldest is playing Fortnite or whatever he's playing until like 4. And I'm like, it's kind of like the whole, you get out of your 30s, and now like drinking is a problem, because if you drink too much, then you have a hangover and you're down for the whole day, and now you have kids. So it's like, I mean, I don't drink like that anyways, but like, that it's kind of like that. Only as I got like in my 30s, like, no, I don't want to stay up that late. That's insane. I love sleep.
No. Yeah, I love it. When did you start your Dads Don't Babysit?
Like the account?
Instagram. Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't remember how long ago I started it. It took off just about, it'll be a year at the end of October when it really started to take off. I had been doing videos specifically about health and wellness, and the concept there from my standpoint was I was bent over one time trying to tie my shoes on the stairs, and my gut was in my way enough that it was like pushing against my diaphragm, so I'm holding my breath. And I remember sitting on the stairs being like, this is ridiculous. I can't even tie my shoes enough. Yeah, exactly. And so the health side of things started to go where I started to go. And as I got healthier, then I became a better dad, because then I could be more involved. I wasn't tired all the time. I wasn't wanting to just sit. I was okay with running around. I mean, I have had plenty of times now that I'm as healthy as I am, where we're running around the house even. I mean, I'm yelling. I've jumped up on the counters, like crowing at them, like crazy stuff that we do. And that's not all the time, but like I've done that. And then they'll be like, and then they'll be like, Dad, I'm tired. Can we sit down? Can we stop? And I'm like, I win. So that's where it started. And then I did, and then I started talking a little bit more about being a dad. And I transitioned out of being a traditional parent, specifically because the oldest, his name is Zeke, he went to college, and I sat out on the front porch, and I was thinking about it, and that whole life flash before your eyes before you die kind of thing. I had that only with him, of him being gone. And it was all of these things where I'm like, man, I could have done that so much better. Sometimes it makes me tear up even when I talk about it, because I'm like, I feel like I wasn't a bad dad, but I could have been so much more understanding and so much more caring and so much more around. Just all those things that I wished I would have done that I didn't do. And now I didn't have the chance to with him. And so I started to share that. And that is where it really started to resonate with people. I think that there's a lot of dads like me out there, but there's not a lot that are out there talking about it. And so I've just been able to like kind of gather people together as we've done this to just really create a community of guys that are like, yeah, that's me. I'm the same way. And so
love it. What's some of the content that's resonated most with your audience?
So the one that really, I mean, it's so funny to think about this. On October 31st, the kids are dressed and ready to go trick or treating, and I look at my wife and I'm like, "Hey, I've added like 300 followers in like a day or two. That's crazy."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wouldn't that be nuts if I made it over 1,000 followers?" I think I had like 800 at the time, and it was like creeping up or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had posted a video about, it was pinned for a long time, about the mama bear. The whole concept was microchimerism, where when a mama is pregnant, baby's T cells will come out into the body and help heal areas in her body. But they've also done, on one of the studies, they've like done autopsies on mama and found male cells in her brain, in her tissues, like where the baby's cells have come out. And so that whole concept to me was interesting. And I took it to a level where I was like, like quantum thought would be, wow, those cells are in there. If I yell at my kids, why do I always get even when they're in the wrong, like I'm like, like you're being bad and all that. And then she comes at me. I'm like, what is this? I thought we were on the same team, and really what I started to think about was, holy cow, she feels it in her cells. Like she feels like I'm attacking her. It's not just because she, like, it's almost like it resonates with the cells in their body. And I know that that's like woo woo and crazy, but quantum physics will tell you all sorts of craziness, right? And so I did a video on that, and that got shared a lot, and I got a lot of pushback on that. But I also, people just resonated with that specifically, and that has like over 18 million views on that specific one. And that's what really started the ramp up of people following. And then I did one on spanking, and I used to spank and I don't anymore. And I took it to an extreme. Again, I came from this whole pastoral concept. One of my favorite things in the church, or one of my favorite things of being a pastor, was studying the Hebrew narrative and the Hebrew concepts, and teaching those to, I always say gringos because of living outside the country, but teaching those to people who don't think like that. And I just said, the spare the rod, spoil the child. We think if you don't spank them, you make them a spoiled brat. And I looked into that, and I'm going, no, that's not what they use the rod for. The shepherd's rod was to, like, one, keep the sheep from falling off the side of a cliff when they were moving and guide them. And then it was also to beat back like wolves and things like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, it doesn't mean that. It means, maybe his concept was more, if you don't protect them, you will ruin them. And now we have a whole understanding of that passage.
Different paradigm.
That changes us saying, oh, well, we should spank our kids. We should hit our kids. And it just, it clicked for me. And when I got a lot of pushback on that one, I looked at my wife and I said, I think I'm onto something. Men specifically are so against what I just said that I think I might be right. And so I just was like, salmon, baby, let's just go against the stream of what I'm used to. And that's where it really started to go. And
why do you think men specifically are most against spanking? Is it, I feel like it might be like a control thing, or like feeling it like, what else am I supposed to do? Like, I can't control this child, and this is what I got. This is my only tool in my tool belt. Any other reasons you think that it's such a hard concept for people?
Yeah, I think that I usually say this about dads and sons. I think we understand that the world is harsh, and not a lot of people want to hear this, but the world is harder for men. And I know that that's like not what people want to say, because it's a man's world, but it's not. And like, there's a higher rate of suicide, a higher rate of imprisonment, like all of the things, like look at the crap jobs, the most dangerous jobs. Like, those kind of things are done by men. And honestly, I look at our whole, like all of it, and I'm like, well, I look at my sons and say, we're made bigger. We're made stronger, not to oppress and push down, but to help and serve and lift up and protect. But that also makes sense for us to do a job that's physically more taxing, physically less safe, those kind of things, right? And so when we talk about this specifically for fathers and sons, I think dads come into this knowing we have this thing inside of us that says, the world is not nice. and it's definitely not going to be nice to you because you're going to be a man. So I've got to make you strong. And it's really like a pushback on ourselves. Like I need to be in control. I run the show. I'm right. And so there's that part of it with the children, but there's also that part of if I'm not hard on you, then when you get into a world that's hard on you, you'll crumble. And they haven't thought outside of that box. And I mean, look at how many centuries have people like spank their kids or, all the way up to beating their children, like just crazy stuff that I think about now. And, the information and the studies are now with us in the sense of saying, yeah, really, it doesn't do well. You don't really teach a child when you're spanking them and they're scared or they're being hurt, that kind of thing.
Right.
I think a lot of dads, it's the control, it's the need to be, we have an ego thing. And then all underneath of that is someday you're going to leave my house and the world will crush you if I don't make you hard. And unfortunately, it's counterintuitive to say, if you build their confidence when they're little by letting them feel what they feel and letting them be who they are inside your home and being okay with everyone else looking at your kid like they're crazy and just being like, hey, man, I don't really care what you think. It's my world and it's his world, that kind of thing. How much that builds their confidence for when they go out into the world. It's almost like instead of when the waves crash against the sand and drag it out to sea, like that's the kind of confidence they have. Instead of that, when you build that confidence, it's like hitting the rocks. It's hitting something solid, and they can withstand that pain, that pressure, and that weight.
Yeah, I like that. How do you? Because we don't really spank, but we do like a little swat every once in a while for like the toddler. Like, hey, I said stop, so stop. Yeah. And so, what are some like alternatives? Because there's so many levels when people talk about spanking.
Yeah.
Like some people say spanking and they have their belt out.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's beyond what
that's a big no for me
at all.
Like, that's like a big high no. Like don't ever take belt off for that. I've had that. Not cool.
Yeah. What are some alternatives for like discipline, especially for like younger, like under 4 or 5?
Sure. Yeah. I think one thing we can't forget is that when they're in their own world, they can't hear you. Biggest frustration for me is not being listened to. Like that comes from all sorts of stuff in my past. But when they're not listening, that's when me specifically, I'm like, oh my gosh, like listen. But when they're in their own little world, they don't realize that. I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, your mom, like you're watching TV and you're like zoned in.
Yeah.
Your mom is standing by. I can still see my mom standing by the steps being like, Nathan, and then like yelling. And I'm like, what? Like I even did make fun of my oldest when you'd be like, what? I didn't even hear you. But we don't realize that that's where they are. Like video games, they get so drawn into them that they're in that world. And so people will say like, well, what about a swat on the butt to like get them to like focus and listen? And I'm like, hey, I don't know about like picking them up depending on how old they are, picking them up and bringing them to you or touching them.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more effort to do that because maybe they're somewhere else and I've got to walk upstairs and handle that.
Yeah.
Or I've got to be more patient. But touching them, getting into their face, not like mean, but like getting into their sight line,
looking at their eyes,
see them and bring them back to where you are, so that you can interact. I think that's a huge one that takes a little bit more patience. It's not as quick, but it also keeps you from having to do any of that.
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot at the park when people are like trying to get their toddlers to leave. They're like, come on, what you got? Snacks at home or 2 more minutes? And it's like, you could just pick them up.
Yeah.
Carry them to the car.
They go with you. And you may have a fight, but you also have to understand that you like, think about that. Like if that were to happen to you and me, we're grown men. But if someone could just drag us away and make us do something that we didn't want to do, I wouldn't be happy. I'd be like, like a lot of people hate their job. They go begrudgingly every day, all those things. Right. I mean, just taper that down into a little toddler's world and that's all they know. And they don't really want to leave. So they're not trying to be defiant in those moments. And I've had plenty of people be like, oh yes, they are. And I have literally looked at my wife and been like, this feels like the 3-year-old giving us the middle finger, like
Yeah.
whatever she's doing, like, Dad, look what I did.
Yeah.
But when it comes to those moments, yeah, you're like, yeah, just pick them up, and or
That's good.
I heard this and I forget who it was, so I can't give them credit. But they say, instead of saying, hey, 5 more minutes, ask them, hey, how many minutes do you need? And then you can kind of negotiate so they feel like they won. Because, like when you could just be like, hey, how many minutes do you need? Now, I asked the youngest because she doesn't know time. So she'd be like, 3 minutes. And I'm like, all right, everybody. Youngest says 3 minutes. And the olders are like, no, say 20, say 20. But
3 is the biggest number in the world.
That's right. She's like, I need 3 minutes. But if they are like, hey, we need 20 minutes, be like, hey, how about 10? And then they may come back and say 15. Do I really care? I mean, honestly, I don't. So if they say, how about 15? Now it's less than what they asked and it's more than what I wanted. And everybody wins, because when it's time to leave, it's cool. And sometimes you could even take your phone and put a timer on it. Then you get to blame the timer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 15 minutes. Yeah, buddy. Click. And then when the timer goes off, be like, hey, the timer went off. And you still may have whatever happened, but at least now it's you and your kids against the timer. Like, oh man, timer, shoot. And you just got to make stuff up. I've seen that.
I think that was like in the Montessori toddler book, where it's like, just write stuff down. So it's like, brush teeth. Like, oh, it says brush teeth on the mirror, so I guess it's time for that now. It's like, pee in the potty. Like, oh, that's what we got to do. The sign says it. It's like an irrefutable fact once it's written down. Like, this time says time to go.
Yeah. But what I noticed there is it takes more thought and effort on our part. And I don't know about you, but when I became a parent the first time, I just assumed kids were coming along because I got married, and you have children when you get married, and I just assumed parenting. That's all about this. And so it's like, oh, this is not easy, and it's not like, I didn't plan for all of this stuff. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so learning and trying new things and becoming more, it's all requirement, even though I didn't assume that was going to be the case.
Yeah, it's crazy that we assume that we could just do it, because without any training, we just do what was done to us. And for most people, that's not super positive.
Right.
And so we'll just wing it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I say all the time, you will default to how you were parented, like you just said.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll default to whatever that was, unfortunately, for all of us. Look, I mean, we all look back on how we were raised. There's great stuff about my family. I wasn't abused or anything like that. I had a great family life. But when I look back, I go, oh, I want to do that differently. And unless I choose consciously to do that, I will subconsciously or unconsciously do the other. I'll just do what they did.
Yeah. What do you do for like outright defiance and disobedience? Like, you say something and then it's just not done. Do you have like creative discipline strategies, maybe for older kids, or I mean, probably for all of them? But how do you handle that?
I will say that I am still very much a work in progress. So there, like that, I can tell you right now, like even thinking about it just makes me go, like the whole anger thing comes out, bringing out the lion, I guess. But I don't know. The more I work on that stuff, I guess the more I would say there are times where you just got to be like, hey, dude, this is what's got to happen. Like, sorry that's what's happening for you. I get that with the 8-year-old right now, Finley. He's pushing on that stuff. And again, he's not pushing on it. He's got such a great personality that there's times where I can be like, hey, man, that's not really you. Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And you can talk through stuff. But when it comes to outright defiance, I don't know, because I don't feel like there's outright like defiance. We have, and I know that's probably going to have so many people be like, no, that's not true, but they're a whole person. So they have all these wants. It's not like they're trying to do that, right? They just don't want to do what you want them to do because they have their own will. And so working through that, becoming more of I don't even want to say negotiate, because it doesn't feel like that. Because I think about, if you've ever heard of the book Never Split the Difference, he was like a hostage negotiator. But it's coming up with win-wins. Not negotiation doesn't have to be a loss for one side and a loss for the other. Just like I said with the 15 minutes, like They wanted 20,
Yeah.
but we don't, well, I wanted 10. We can meet in the middle. You win, I
Yeah.
win, no big deal. Right. So I kind of come back at it outright defiance that way. Okay, what's going on? Are we hungry? Are we tired?
Yeah.
How are we feeling? Like those kind of things first, and then go from there. I'm not gonna lie, totally have moments where I'm like, just do it, that's totally
Do what I say.
exactly.
Do you feel like it it seems like the parents who don't demand respect end up being the most respect. Do you feel like your household is like a household of respect and honor in general?
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I think the ones who demand respect, like you will respect me, that it wasn't earned. It's not like
Yeah.
it wasn't something that you show them respect, and that's how they learn respect is by feeling it. And so I think that those who demand it, yeah, I totally agree. They'll listen to you to your face, and they'll do what you want, maybe begrudgingly, maybe like maybe they'll just do it so they don't have to deal with you. But if they had the option when you weren't around, they would do whatever they wanted. And
Right.
and that's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, yeah, I think that they learn respect from us. So they see it how I treat my wife. They definitely see it and feel it in how I treat them. And so they get the feel of what that means. And when they don't do that, again, coming down on them hard. I read this like 4 or 5 different times just yesterday on Instagram. I'm like, wow, there's so many people saying the same thing, but it's like shaming a child for doing the wrong thing doesn't actually help them do the right thing. It's and so instead of coming down on them, you just be like, hey man, that wasn't really cool how you talked to me. And again, that sounds like I'm talking to this 4-year-old that way or whatever, but it's amazing how much kids pick up when you just go, whoa, 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 hey, I don't want to be treated that way.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So
No, I love that. What's the biggest pushback you get for when you say just don't spank? Do they like you're gonna spoil your child? Is that the main
So,
argument?
okay, so I grew up in the church. I know you said your dad was a pastor.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the church. My dad was also a pastor. So that is my, I understand that side of things. So the Christian response is, what about spare the rod, spoil the child? That's my favorite. I'm like, oh, did you want to go there? We could do that. So you get that. That's a big one. I get called a snowflake a ton, which is so funny to me because I get it, right? Someone who can't handle their own emotions and is afraid of confrontation or afraid of everything, whatever. But that's not. And like this is the reason that children are this is the reason that children are entitled. And I'm just sitting there like that's a big one. Some people are just like, no, that I got spanked and I'm fine. And that's usually when I'm like, are you? Like, let's go deeper on that.
You seem angry in the comments.
Right? Yeah. So I'd say those are the big 4, like spare the rod, spoil the child, and then snowflake generation. I'm fine. That's a big one. But yeah, those ones, they kind of make me, they bother me because all I say is, okay, that's one way. You've done it one way. And I feel that I have compassion on that because I was that way. I was the guy who demanded respect. I was the guy who spanked. I was the guy who yelled. I mean, I'll still raise my voice here and there. And I've asked for forgiveness a lot faster now than I used to, but I was that guy. And so I have an understanding of where that's coming from. And so all I do now, or all I want to do now is just say, well, what if you did this? Like, what if you tried something else and it worked and you had to connect with your kid? Because all I really want for guys, like dads specifically, is for them to feel like them to let their kids feel what they really do feel inside for them. Right. Because none of us are like, oh, I just can't stand my kid. Well, maybe there are some, but most guys are like, I love my children. I love my family. I want to protect them. I want them to know that. That's why we work so hard, right? We want to provide this life for them so that they know we love them. And the truth is all they want to know, all they want is our time and like FaceTime and interaction. And then when we do that, we're not nice, and I want men to be able to connect with their kids, get rid of the junk that's in their life, connect with their kids, and change their family tree by actually being the dads that go where the kids go, my dad was awesome. I want to be just like him. you know?
Yeah. I love that. I read in one of the discipline books, Christian discipline books,
Mm-hmm.
that there's like the rod, which is like the shepherd's hook that you think of, like the thick one.
Yeah.
And that's like fighting off
Mm-hmm.
the wolves and stuff. And then they had like a little kind of, just like a little switch, like a little, not like, nothing that's like hurting the sheep, but like when the sheep is like wandering off, you kind of just tap them back into in a line. Like, hey, that's a cliff, you know?
Yeah,
like,
right, yeah.
And so like, even that, like, that's the most intense discipline that the shepherd would give, would be like, hey, you're going to die that way.
Right, exactly.
So
and if you think about
I'm going to whack you a little bit this way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you think about it, shepherds were actually poorer, right? So the chances of them actually owning the sheep was very low, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think of my background, when you think of the Hebrew culture, the best kind of lamb, you needed the best lamb for sacrifice, right? There couldn't be any blemishes on it whatsoever. And so when people talk about, oh yeah, they would break their leg. I'm going to tell you right now, if you came into my house and you watched over my dog and it ran off and then you broke its leg because it ran off, we aren't going to be friends anymore. You know, like you can't watch my dog. You probably aren't going to come to my house anymore. It's the same kind of thing. Like most of those shepherds were likely paid by someone who owned the sheep. And the last thing you're going to do is break the sheep's legs or beat the sheep. I mean, you're going to lose your job real fast. And so when you come at it like that, and I know, like Jesus said, I'm the good shepherd, and there's a constant reference there, but that's because that's how they understood it. But yeah, I kind of always look back at, you're right. Like you're not smacking the sheep around. You would use a lot of force for protection from, you got David. David used a sling for, what do you say, a lion and a bear. And that's force to protect, not to hurt the sheep.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Will you talk a little bit more about how you've gotten fit and how the fitness has affected your fatherhood?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot there. Dude, my brain goes everywhere. So just draw me back in wherever we need to.
No, you're good. Like, love it.
When I got more fit is when I really got more energy and started playing a lot more. But as I did that, I also kept looking further down the road. I have a video where I'm like, hold your kids. Who cares what everybody says? Hold them all the time. Every time my daughter says, unless I'm full of like holding groceries or doing something, I can't pick her up, or there's something I'm gonna put her in danger, I'm holding that kid. Yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna hold you, sure. And I need to be strong enough to just handle that. I mean, you probably know this. You've held your kid so long that your arm feels like it's gonna fall off. It's like burning. Yeah. You're switching arms and all that. And all I wanted to do was be able to go, okay, I can hold you for as long as you want. I had a friend who, his oldest son was born, and I don't know what all happened, but I think the cord got wrapped around his neck when he was born, and it cut off the blood supply. So he has, I don't know what that is. I don't know what, but he cannot walk. Like there's very little he can do. And this dad was like 155 pounds soaking wet, right? And so I remember him saying, Jace is going to get bigger, and I need to be stronger because I'm always going to have to take care of him. Yeah. And so that sits in my head. Not that I'm always going to have to take care of him, but him saying that, we got talking about, okay, I need to deadlift heavy. I need to do the compound movements, because what's required of me as a father is to protect. Now, I'm crazy. So I take that to a level where I'm like, what do I need to do if someone comes after my family? Like, my children think I can do anything, so I better be able to, right? I think it's Ben Barker. I don't know if you follow him or not, but Ben Barker, I'm pretty sure he's the one who said, be the badass your kids think you are. Yeah. And it's like, I love that. I'm like, yes, I want to know. My kids are not afraid. I'm like, when they say like monsters don't come in our house. And I say this all the time. They'll be like, well, is there monsters? And I'm like, monsters don't come around here. And they'll be like, is that because you'll hurt them? And I'm like, exactly. Like monsters are afraid of daddy because I'm loud and I'm mean, and I'll beat them until they're dust and stuff like that. And they're like, oh my gosh, my dad is scary, but he keeps me safe, right? That's the whole point. And so my crazy is that, like, I need to be able to sprint fast enough that if somebody picks up my kid while we're out, that I can catch them and then destroy them. Like, and that is literally what's in my brain is, I love that. Seek and destroy, keep my kids safe, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where my fitness has started to change, where I've started to go, okay, heavier lifts, actually boost testosterone. Well, a 20-year-old guy today has the same testosterone level as a 60-year-old guy 20 years ago.
That's wild.
That's insane, right? And so I'm going, well, if that's the case, we are weaker, way weaker, and way less like manly. And I don't mean that like, oh, I hunt and I fish. And I just mean way less man because less testosterone. Yeah. And so I actually do. I try to figure out how do I healthily and without doing testosterone, without taking it, how do I boost my own testosterone? How do I keep my own health and vitality? Because there is much that is required of me that may never, ever happen. I may never have to run somebody down and beat him to dust because they wanted to pick my kid up. Like, like I hope I don't, right? But I'd rather have it and not ever need it than need it and not ever have it, or need it and not have it. And so that has really pushed how I see myself as a dad, as a husband, like protector, all of those kind of things that they all come through there.
Yeah. So what's your like fitness regimen right now?
Yeah. So I do CrossFit. And then, the worst thing you can do is ask a CrossFitter about his workouts, right? So I'm not going to do that. But it's funny because I used to be a vegan too. So I'm like a vegan and CrossFitter. I'm going to talk your face off. But so I do CrossFit. I excel more at the weightlifting side of things. And so I actually would come in the mornings, and we just finished this a couple weeks ago, but we would do what's called juggernaut strength training, and it's powerlifting. So I would power lift before CrossFit, and then we do the metabolic conditioning, the Metcon, for all of the goods that come out of that. And so I'm getting ready to start working more on gymnastics, so like rope climbs and ring muscle ups and things like that. It's weird. I never I used to be a fighter. I played soccer, so I've never been like horribly like obese or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I never really had the body I wanted until I started doing CrossFit, and then I started looking into the science of it. I'm like, oh wow, okay. The heavier the weights, the more your muscles change. I mean, you look at a sprinter versus a long distance runner, and you can see the sprinter's more muscular. Well, that's because it calls on different muscle fibers and requires different things from their body than a long distance runner. And so I always wanted to look more like a sprinter than a long distance runner. And I hate running anyway, so it worked out for me.
Yeah. I started CrossFit last October.
Oh, nice.
And I was trying to get in shape forever before that. And then so I would just like go on runs.
Yeah.
And I just found I hate running. And so I always thought I was just like, I'm just not motivated. I'm just not healthy. And it's like, no, I just hate running.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once I started doing a workout I enjoyed, I get up and do it.
Yeah.
It's fun to go too. So
I love that, man. Yeah. Because I used to fight, my wife was like, okay, you need to have less bruises on your face. And so CrossFit kept the fighter feel, but no getting punched in the face. So
nice. I like it. Do you do any like jiu-jitsu or kickboxing anymore? Or do you like,
I don't. I'm looking to get back into jiu-jitsu. I've been talking with Kip Sorensen from the Order of Man, just like asking him questions about how he does. Because I saw him, and he goes to classes, and the thing is, you don't really learn it if you don't go very much, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, how do I do that without taking more time away from my family? And so he goes in the middle of the day, and so I'm working on figuring out how I can do that and get into a class that'll maybe meet at like noon and do my lunchtime that way, as opposed to missing out. But then you get your kids into it, and you can go and
bring them all.
Yeah, roll with them, and I love that. Like I let the kids do that. I know some stuff from when I fought, so I taught them how to do the rear naked choke, and so they'll get behind me and they'll do it, and then I'm like, that's right. I'm like, you got to
learn the tap out first. When I tap, you stop.
That's right. I'm tapping, dude. Stop
it. I love it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. You talked a little bit about, I think in one of your posts about planting a church. That was you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you recover from that? Because I was in ministry also.
Yeah.
How long did that take, and what was kind of your processing of that?
Yeah. So my story kind of ends there and then restarts. And that's probably how I processed it, is that I totally just like blew up my entire life and then restarted. But it was that was when I was in the concept of, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. So my family just comes along and like that'll just happen. And so I would be I would go do meetings or figure whatever out. I mean, when I started the church, we didn't have like a front man for the band. So I learned how to play guitar, and then I sang, and that was dangerous. And then I taught, so it felt like the Nate show. But that was just until we could get people going. And I ended up stepping out of my marriage in the midst of all that, feeling like nothing was working. I got to a very, very dark place where I wanted to actually kill myself. And instead of killing myself, I just imploded my whole life, which was another permanent solution to a temporary problem. But at the same time, I was like, I don't really want to die, but I felt like I wanted, you know what I mean? And so, so this was, I think subconsciously it was some way to be able to just, napalm it and start over. So my recovery was probably not the best move. It was not the best way to do that. But ministry will take it out of you. There's oh shoot, I won't even be able to tell you what book it is. I'll have to send it to you. I'll have to shoot you the name later. But there's a book about burnout in the church that I read, and I was like, that's me. It was all of it. I'll put it to you this way. I did the church plant for 4 years. And 6 months after I left, there were 2 guys that tried to take it over to handle it. And those 2 guys, they decided to close the doors because they couldn't do it. And that's not to say I was great. That just meant all I was taking on, 2 guys took on, and then we're like, we're tapping out.
Yeah, it's brutal. My dad was a church planner. So they started in 2000, and it's still going. So it's like one of the rare ones that survived. But early years are brutal.
Yeah, they are.
I read one of the books was Dangerous Calling by Paul Tripp.
Oh, yeah.
And I was reading that, and I was like, I need to quit. Because it's like, this will destroy your life if you don't do it right. Yeah. And it's hard to do it right.
Yeah, you're right. And there's not a lot for, I don't think you need to be this way, but there's a lot of thought that I need to do it right. I need to be perfect. And because I'm the example and I'm the leader, and you're held to a standard here. But you're still a human. And so there's still times where you're tired or frustrated or whatever, or sad. And I mean, my growing up in the church and being in the pastor's house, I can tell you that I know stuff about my parents' life that they wouldn't let anybody know because they didn't feel like they could. And to a level at times, I'm like, well, that brought in a lot of pain to them. And so Mad Church Disease, that was the name of the book.
Okay.
Mad Church Disease.
I'll write it down. Mad Church
Disease.
Love it.
But
how do you think about faith and Jesus and church nowadays?
Yeah. Well, when they say raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he'll never stray from it, he'll never leave from it.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. I think that I look around the world now, and I basically put God and the church together. And that was the problem, is that God was never separated from the church. And so when the church, in my opinion, when the church failed, when I stepped out of my marriage and all of that happened, they basically, not my church plant specific, but the conglomeration of churches around us that were part of it, we were part of, they basically said, you can't go to that church anymore. Well, then we were just out in the middle of nowhere. And they're like, oh, we're going to do this restoration process. And they put me with these 3 people that were supposed to keep in touch with me. It was very front end loaded. Well, front end loaded meant they met with me 3 times that first year. And I was supposed to read a book. And it was unfortunately for them, it was a total joke. It was like, if this is what you guys do, this is unfortunate. This is not how this is done. And that's sad. But, when all of that went down, I began to separate God from the church. And I think that was a good thing. Because now, I remember talking to an atheist, and he's like, if you believe in God, you're just expletive, stupid.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I go, man, what I know about just pregnancy and birth in my own life, my own wife, what I know about that, you cannot ever tell me that there wasn't an intelligent design behind that. You'll never convince me. Just as much as my friend that was an atheist was like, you're totally stupid for believing in God. I am like, you have to have more faith to believe that this all happened. Somebody blew up a printing press and it made a fully perfect dictionary. You're out of your mind. So from my standpoint, I met God outside of the church because I had been in the church for so long. I couldn't separate the two. So now, I have a friend she's like a little sister kind of to me, and she'll be like, I'm going to get you to come to my church. And I'm like, yeah, that's literally like trying to get me to come back into a cage. Like, it's just never going to work for me because I met this God that's so much bigger than the walls of the church. Yeah. That stepping back in, it takes me all the way back to the things that I felt like I don't know how to put it other than it feels like I'm trying to walk back into a cage. And so all the walls go up for me. The moment I step in there, I'm like, I'm already not in line with it. And that's okay with me because we always called God, like the Bible calls God Father. And I love pushing buttons. I love pushing the envelope. There are plenty of feminine ways to understand God too, right? So as a dad, I go, like it makes sense. But what I want also to understand is that the feminine side of life is inside of God as well. And so I can call him mom. It's just as much as I wanted to call him dad. And so, but from my standpoint, as I've grown outside of that whole situation, I've been able to go, oh, that's why you equate yourself with a parent. Because there's so many things that I see in my children that it's almost like he whispers that that's why, right? You know what I mean? And I love that. It makes me tear up. It makes me excited. But when I look at my kids, and this is the part that I didn't get in the church. I don't know about you, but I didn't get this from the church. When I look at my kids and I think about how much I love them and how excited I am that they're mine, when I do that and how much joy I have, I always felt like God was watching me, waiting for me to screw up to send me to hell. Yeah. And so the God that I met outside the church was a God that was like that. He's the dad that goes, a father. Yeah. It make me happy. I just love being around you. I just want you close to me. I want to wrestle with you. I want to hold you. I want to love you. Spill your drink on me. I don't care. Like that is, we talk about God getting into the mess. I mean, you have 4 kids. Yeah. Poop goes everywhere. Puke goes everywhere. Like last weekend, we had a birthday party, put the youngest in the Jeep. She's sitting in her seat and just pukes everywhere. It's all over her. It's all over the Jeep. I mean, it was crazy, right? It's all and then I'm trying to get her out of the seat. So it's all over me. It's everywhere. And I get her out and I look at her and I'm like, we were in this park where there's no water. So I grab some bottled water we had and I'm dumping it on her, but now she's wet. So I take all her clothes off and I'm looking around and I don't have anything. So I take my shirt off and I'm drying her off. Yeah. Well, now we got vomit in her seat. I'm not putting her back in there. So we're 20 minutes from home. I sit her in the front seat. This is if there's cops listening, I'm sorry. It's already too late, I guess. But I sit her in the front seat and I just drove home with her sitting in my front, in my lap, right? Yeah. I get home to my wife throwing up and I'm like, what is going on? What is happening? Yeah. The next day, Wyatt needs to go to the bathroom and he's in there way too long. We were out we had just gone out for his birthday. It was we were in a restaurant. We went to get ice cream and I walk in and there's poop everywhere. I'm like, what is going on with this weekend? We just need a reset. Bad tacos. Yeah, exactly. It's everywhere. But none of that changed. In fact, I feel like it endears them closer to me. You're mine. I got you. I'll take care of you. I looked at my son. We're in the mess together. We're in this together. He's like, Dad, it's in my underwear. I'm like, did you get it on your shorts? No. All right, then we're good. We take the underwear, we throw it away. He's like, why are you throwing it away? I'm like, because I'm not taking it with us. And then, overshare maybe. He's like, Dad, now I'm the only one going commando. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. Take mine off, pull the underwear off, pull the pants back on. I'm like, now we're both commando. You good to go? He's like, I'm good. And then we leave. All of that to me, that's where God's like, now you get it. That's how I feel about you. And I didn't get that. Yeah, I didn't get that growing up. I didn't get that from the church. There was always a fear. It was fear-based. Yeah. And I don't think my dad tried to do that as much, but it's what we were taught. It just seemed like that was you should fear God. And most of the time when he shows up, he's like, hey, don't be afraid. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's his first words. Yeah. His first words are don't be afraid because he knows how scary he looks. And he's like, I love you. I'm all about you. You don't need to be afraid. And I think about that for my children. That's what I want for them. I've said this in the past, and I stole it from Jordan Peterson, but he said, like, talking about being a warrior in the garden. He said, you should be a monster. You should be a savage, just scary monster animal. And then you should learn how to control that and be so disciplined. And I take it one step further and say, so disciplined that my children will never know that side of me unless someone outside of our house provokes that to where I need to protect them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's that view. I can't go to church and feel that. I get that with my children. I get that out in nature. There's a lot of awe that comes from just being out in nature, watching full moons and listening to crickets.
Yeah. Love that. What are some resources you would point dads to who are like, I want to read a book about some of this stuff, or I want to grow more in my fatherhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Shafali, she's written several books. She also did, if you don't take the time to read, she did an interview. Actually, she did a Mind Valley interview with I forget, Vishnu, I think it is his name, but she did a Mind Valley interview. She also did an interview with Tom Bilyeu on impact theory. She again, coming from a mom standpoint, but also a psychologist standpoint. So Dr. Gabor Mate, that dude he's on another level, man. Like, I just listened to an interview with him and Tom Bilyeu while I was driving home from a sale, and you got to break it down because he's so good, but he takes everything back to childhood trauma and how to treat your children. It's so good. That's one I highly recommend. So anything.
What's his name? How do you spell that?
Gabor, and then Mate is Mate with the accent over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he if I'm not mistaken, he was born either in a concentration camp in Germany, or he was born right before, and then they were taken. I want to say his parents died in Auschwitz, but he talks about that stuff all the way down to anxiety, and a pregnant woman will be transferred to the baby, that kind of stuff. Like, they'll be an anxious child, that kind of thing. Interesting. But he's so good. So anything from him, Mr. Chaz on Instagram, he's so good. I love his stuff. Like, he's so much fun. He's really good about how he does it, and he's more Montessori. So he's good. Let's see. Those are some of my favorites. Really, those are some of my favorites. This was stuff where I kind of decided to change how I parented, and then all these things started coming to me in that sense. I never went looking for
put all the pieces together. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's on your nightstand? What are you reading right now? Do you read at night?
I'm reading. I'm reading Talk to Her, and actually we're doing like a live on September 9th on Therapy for Dads. It's therapy for dads, but we'll do a live on his Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, on that particular book. And I'm blanking.
What's it called?
Talk to Her. It's about being a father to daughters.
Cool.
The Whole Brain Child. That's another one, and I'm totally blanking on who that guy is. I feel bad. But that's another. There's those two authors are really good.
Nice. I'll put links to that.
Yeah, and then on the other side of things, for guys, specifically for guys, when it comes to like working out and stuff like that, discipline equals freedom by Jocko Willink. Those are things where that stuff there is huge for dads. Makes you a better human, better man, but then you get the benefits of being a better husband and father for it too.
Cool. I love it. Awesome. How can people connect with you? Just Instagram? Is that your spot?
So Instagram, I have been. It's funny because I feel like I've done a bunch of stuff where I've started and been like, hold off on that. I want to try something else first. And so I don't have it up yet, but the website is dadsdon'tbabysit.tv. It's not a lot. There's nothing there right now. I've actually been working on a couple like PDFs to just give away. That they'll be there soon. And then Instagram is really where you find me. I mean, I check all my messages. So if it comes through, great. If it doesn't, I'll find you in the hidden messages. Unless, and I don't say this because I'm a sales guy, but like, unless you try to sell me something, then I probably will just delete that. But anybody who reaches out, I've had a really fun time I did the post about holding their face and telling them how much how grateful I am. And that has been, I've had tons of people reach out about how they've done that. And just, I've like cried about some of the stuff I've read. I've had somebody that was like, I wish my dad would do this, or I wish my dad would have done this. I had one girl who basically said, I listened to you say it and imagined my dad. And I was like, oh my God, like crying, like, look what's happening, telling my wife that stuff. But that one, I found a lot of hidden messages because people just send them to you. So I'll find you if you message me there. It just may take a minute.
Awesome. Cool. I love it. Well, thanks for hopping on today.
Yeah, man. Great talking. Yeah.